Kate Mila Fauci, which means in Gaelic 100,000 welcomes.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
History is a nightmare from which one must awaken.
Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome along to Deep Diving with myself, Malachy Murray. I have a confession to make. I've had a little bit of a tipple earlier in the evening than I normally would, and I have to say, I really am enjoying myself. And I'm also celebrating because it is La Decima, the 10th epic conversation begins right now between myself and that little druid from the other world in the west of Ireland. You can see him now doing something with his chain. It's Mr. Balor O'Brien, sir. How are you?
Hello, Malachy. How are you doing?
Oh, good. So tell me, what were you doing there, Balor, with your little chain? You looked like you were doing some sort of a ritual. Tell everyone what you were doing, sir.
Yes, well, I was reconnecting, Malachy. I was reconnecting with the forces beyond, the forces from the other world. It's a long time I haven't, and to tell you the truth, my body, my physical frame, my body is weakening because I haven't been dedicated in my celebration of the pagan gods of the other world, of the creatures and the magic that have gifted me the life I have.
So what do you need to do to improve your ethereal body, indeed your physical body? What nourishes Balor O'Brien in this physical realm?
There are many, many processes, Malachy. It requires enormous amounts of energy, and there are rituals. They vary. It depends. It depends on the time of year. It depends on to whom I need to draw on power, because at different times in the year, at different times, we will have. Let me explain it. Let me explain in a way you'll understand, Malachy, because
Please do, sir.
There are these battles and wars going on in the other world. There are fights as they battle for control, sometimes nearly kind of political battles or military battles in the other world. And it's very important that what we do is celebrate the correct ones. Who's winning? Who is available to is supposed to gift you with the powers of a longer life, to extend your life, extend your health, your youth. So it's important to have all of this.
This is good. So you're something of a Tony Robbins of the other world. You are someone who dishes out advice with regard to becoming a better spiritual being. So if there was 3 things that someone could do today, right now, looking at this, what are the 3 things very quickly they should do to become more spiritually enlightened?
Right now?
This second?
Right now, we need to be going to the Sheelin gigs. Find the Sheelin gig closest to you. For those who aren't familiar with these are statues of women.
I think I have a picture.
Their
I have a picture here. I'll
vaginas.
Put up. Okay. There she is. Yes, she is bearing it all there, letting it all hang out. Fair play to her.
These are ancient symbols. They are extremely important. They can grant you incredible powers.
What do you do, Balor, to remind our viewers? What do you do when you encounter a Sheelin gig? Do you give her a little rub? Do you give her a salute? Do you Genuflect, what do you do when you are in a Sheila na Gig's area?
No, you do not, rubber. I don't know what kind of I don't know what kind of stuff you get up to with sculptures and statues, Malachy, but you don't disrespect and defile the Sheila na Gig. You worship at her altar. You do the circle, do the rounds, and you pay homage to this special power from the other world.
Okay, that's one. Two?
Well, Malachy, there's loads of ways. I mean,
But just give us,
if you want to get
just give us
very
a second
dark with
one
it,
there. Yeah.
if you want to get very dark, there are these gruesome sacrifices. You may decide to sacrifice an animal. You may decide to sacrifice a human. But the more gruesome the death of the living, whatever living thing you've chosen to sacrifice, the more gruesome their death, the more power drawn from the Sheila na Gig, because it feeds on suffering.
Okay, we've gone very dark there. This is a family show after all. What about a third option? Maybe a little more lighthearted. I was thinking maybe, barefoot in the park, reconnecting with nature type of vibe. It's just sacrificing humans or animals, maybe a little too far.
Well, that it may be too rich for you today, Malachy, but I've seen it, and it's happened.
Yeah,
not
can we
far
move
from
on?
where I am now.
Can we move on, please? Just to the
Sure.
third option.
Sure, Malachy. Move on. Let's move on.
My God. The third option. What would be the third option to become more spiritual? That's what I'm saying, Balor.
The third option.
Yes.
Well, you don't have just three. You've many options. You've many ways of paying tribute.
I know that. Can we get the third option, please, Balor? Just give us a third option. And
all right. So you have Bjaltane. You have the flame protects. You have, as it's protecting you now from me, Malachy. You'll need a big flame to protect you now. There's the water rituals, which reverse aging. They reverse, they reverse aging, and they can counter death. They can raise the dead with these rituals. As I've said, you have the Kialak's powers. I suppose surrendering to the realm of storms, you can draw on the power of the elements of storms and tornadoes and waves. And I mean, I could spend 5 hours listing them all to you, Malachy. And look,
well, maybe just concentrate on the candle staying lit. Maybe push it a bit further away, and we won't be distracted by that. Anywho, let's move on to the topic of the evening, La Decima, the 10th epic conversation between the greatest broadcaster ever to exist and a druid from the other world. Tell us, what is the story tonight? Where are you taking us in the other world?
We're talking about a very, very important event which took place in County Clare. Yet again, it's a region of Ireland which is filled with adventure and filled with these huge moments in history. So one of the big moments which took place hundreds of years ago was the battle between the O'Brien clans. They had a civil war, and of course you had an English army get involved as well. So this civil war, it was an O'Brien civil war, very gruesome event. I've briefly spoken about it before, only very briefly, but it's something that is very, very critical to understanding the great powers which lie in the other world. So shall I continue, or would you like to
Please do,
something
sir.
now?
No, sir, I shall allow you to take the floor. And you tell us what went down in County Clare during this very mysterious and epic battle.
Okay. All right, Malachy. So here's what happened. You had the King of Thomond, which was an O'Brien. It had been since Brian Boru that you had a very powerful family. Now they had great connections, these very powerful connections to the other world, which dated back to Brian Boru and his relationship with a very, very powerful Banshee who resided on a hilltop near Killaloe. So once she was gone, once that time had passed, where they had established this connection, the O'Brien clan with the other world, for many, many hundreds of years, they were very, very connected, and they learned all of these important rituals. They learned how to gain powers, draw powers when needed to protect their lands, to protect Ireland from invaders, from attackers. And there was threats from the other world as well, where they were where they needed to face off against great dangers, such as Crom Crua. And at one point in 1276, the King of Thomond was beaten out of his throne by his great nephew. So Brian Druid was the king, and he was removed by Turlock, his nephew. And Brian wasn't a very intelligent man, to be fair with you. Now, he wasn't the most intelligent, and it was more suitable and appropriate for the king to be someone who was able to deal with the dangers posed by not only the British Empire, not only by other forces around the country that wished to take control. You also had to face off against the dangerous powers from the other world. And I mean, they're going to keep silencing us here, Malachy. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
You mean your breath?
My breath? Absolutely not. I don't breathe. I don't require breath, Malachy.
Okay. Well, it's probably the first guilty party with regards to that candle being blown out. No matter how many dark entities are in the room with you.
Yeah, let's not.
It's just a little distracting. Here. It's just a little distracting. That's all. You know. Please continue. Mm-hmm. It is a fascinating story. Hammer it home, old boy.
All right. So what we had was the O'Brien, the nephew, took the kingdom, and he took the crown from his great uncle. And this great uncle wasn't a very intelligent gentleman. So what did he do? He went and he wanted revenge. Of course he wanted revenge. He had been removed from his position, something that he felt was his birthright. And in response, he basically sought to reclaim it, and he was very giving with the secrets, with the otherworld secrets, which the family closely guarded. And this was a great opportunity for Thomas de Clare, because Thomas was for a very long time envious and wishing to take possession of these powers, these rituals which would imbue him with these remarkable abilities to gain enormous influence, not just in Ireland, not just in the world we live in. He wanted to possess lands in the other world. and he knew that the O'Briens had the secrets to it. But when he sent armies to battle them, he ran into resistance where it didn't matter how large a force he summoned, because they would always be beaten back by the O'Brien forces. It seemed almost supernatural the way they were able to resist him. And so when he had this opportunity to pull on the knowledge Brian had, Brian was very susceptible to flattery and was easily won over with a kind of a promise of elevating his kingdom. And so this awful battle, I suppose civil war, which lasted years between the different O'Brien clans, began. And they cemented this with a very dangerous dark magic ritual where they both spilled their own blood and blended it together in Bunratty, and called upon terrible spirits to wreak havoc against his nephew and his forces.
Bala,
So
I have one question. Are there young spirits, as in the spirits of children, in your domain right now? Because through my headphones, I can hear cries of hope, cries of communication from the other world. Can you address those children and tell them that we are here for them? If they need to be heard, we will communicate directly with those children, and we will surely free them, if needs be, to enter the gates of heaven and allow us to continue with the podcast.
when you have these kinds of discussions with a druid like myself, Malachy, you start to hear the voices that we hear, because you're not listening to sounds now, you're listening to the cries from generations, you're listening to the cries from history, from other worlds, people calling upon you, they're screaming for you to wake up and to listen. Are you listening, Malachy?
Well, I can't help it but hear them. And I want to say to those ghost children, please do not haunt my dreams.
Okay, well,
there's nothing worse than waking up and seeing the ghostly face of a child at the end of your bed. And that child saying, please, please stop snoring. It's quite disturbing. I've had that dream on several occasions, and these voices are bringing all that up. I apologize.
The more you connect to the other world, the more you correspond with me, and we have this connection, the more you will be drawn into the other world, and you will feel and start to notice just how much there is out there. You will become absorbed by it.
There they are again.
So
can you hear them?
Very careful. It's very important that you do your best to not let your mind unravel when this is going on. You need to come with me to perform rituals to steel your mind against attacks, because there are forces which will go for weak minds, especially when they're opened up to the secrets of the other world, Malachy. It's critical that you come to me soon so that we can perform a ritual to protect you.
I was just worried if it was me, if you at home can also hear the cries of ghostly children from Bala's lair. Could you please comment below? We will address. There they are again. There they are again. It's quite disturbing now. It's quite disturbing. That's all I'll say. I'm going to pour myself another glass. Please continue with your story. But do know that I'm not in a good place.
All right. Well, liquid courage, Malachy, and let's pursue. Let's share the important information of the past. This is vital information for everyone. We can't We can't be ignoring it for any longer. This has been swept under the rug for hundreds of years. And these secrets, these stories, they are pouring back into the world. Their relevance is, they're more relevant than ever. They're more relevant than they were during these battles and these civil wars that took place. And people need to open their third eye and be aware of everything.
Out there.
Exactly, Malik. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get you. I think we'll get you. I think I can see it. I think I can see your eye opening. If you keep up that energy, Malachy. You got it. Go on. Keep going. More. Now that's it. That's the stuff. You have to keep it up. See, we need some more candles. We need some spells. I have a spell book there. We'll get you sorted out. We've a robe getting made for you. We're looking after you, okay? We're gonna get through this together, Malachy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again. Please continue with your marvelous story about these battling O'Briens and their journey into the dark side.
Right. So the O'Briens were at war, uncle versus nephew. Uncle was a moron, so he sought the assistance of his enemy, their historic enemy, Thomas de Clare. Now, Thomas wanted these great powers, so he did an awful blood ritual, this gruesome blood ritual, and when those spirits spat forth from the other world, they wreaked havoc, and combined with the armies of de Clare and Brian Druid, they were able to march through the O'Brien territories and reclaim all of them. And Turlock and his forces were forced back. They were forced to withdraw all the way to Galway. And he was able to call upon his cousin, William, and the McNamara and O'Dea tribes. Now, this wasn't enough. They needed otherworldly magic. So they called upon creatures from beyond, from other realms to assist them. And they were able to beat back yet again the English forces, but not just Thomas de Clare. They were able to beat back his uncle Brian, and he had to retreat to Bunratty Castle. So Brian was held up at Bunratty, and Thomas was very angry with this. He was saying, we're losing this, and they're using powerful magic. We need to use darker magic. There's other rituals here that we're not using. Now, Brian was very, very hesitant to use such gruesome powers, and unfortunately for him, his son wasn't. His son Duncan wasn't shy about it and made a deal with Thomas. And so basically they performed an even more gruesome ritual, which involved the sacrifice of Brian. So it involved hanging him till he was nearly dead, drawing him and quartering him, which involved his body being tied to horses and ripped apart. His head was stuck on a spike outside Bunratty Castle and raised high above the gates. Now, when this happened, it sprang up horror and disgust all across the countryside because people couldn't believe the lengths that Thomas was going to go to gain powers from the other world, to crush the Irish spirit. They said, oh my God, we can't have this. We must unite. So the tribes who had been staying out of this civil war, they very quickly picked a side, and most of them chose to follow Turlock and the O'Brien clans. But some who would be very power hungry or very fearful of the powers and the depths Thomas was willing to go to, because there is, of course, a shield and a gig, an ancient stone of a hag, in Bunratty Castle, and it has lain in that site for thousands of years. So when they were there, that was the object to which they sacrificed. It was a dark, evil magic which Dunkeld knew and was able to perform with Thomas, but it required the blood of his father, which he happily gave. Now, this led to an enormous boost in their powers, and they drove back the O'Briens once again. And it was crippling. It was a 7-year slaughter all across the countryside into the other world. And constantly Thomas sought greater powers from the other world. He constantly craved it. Now, while all of this was going on, Dunkeld really dug in, and in order to continue to grow his influence, he called upon darker and darker magics. And each time you call upon them, there's a price to be paid. And after 7 years, he reached a point where he could not pay the price. He could not compensate for what he had taken. So they took it back and they punished him. He was found drowned in the middle of Clare. And with that, it was the end of the Civil War because his forces dispersed and Thomas de Clare wasn't in a position to continue the battle with Turlough and the O'Briens. He couldn't do it anymore. He was gone. His power, his ability, the best he could do was compromise. And he was very angry. He was furious. He was absolutely desperate for more magic, for more power. And he couldn't get it now. He couldn't get it now. He couldn't continue the war. So he had to bide his time. While he was waiting, he constructed a huge stone fortress at Bunratty, where there had only been wooden structures before, and he installed a shield and a gig in a place of very great significance above his throne room. And going on from that, he waited. Now he died. Supposedly he died 3 years later. But there's an interesting little fact about that, because he was supposed to have died in 1287, right? And his son Richard took over. But one of his younger sons, they required, for inheritance reasons, to confirm the date of death for Thomas. So in 1306, when they were confirming the day he died, many witnesses spoke about how he died in Bunratty Castle. But when they were asked the cause, everybody fell silent. There were whispers of unusual rituals and bizarre sounds and screams coming from the castle on that night. And some people claim to have seen him walking around since, as young as ever, 20 years later. So there were these rumors. People were nervous about the Declares because there were tales that they were practicing dark arts, that they were forming some sort of a cult, and there was people worried. When your local farmer went missing, or when some animals went missing, they were wondering. They were worried for this. They were worried what they were doing in that castle. How many of the people who've gone missing have ended up there, never to emerge? And so they were biding their time, the Declares. And so in 1306, Turlough died. The same year that this inheritance, this assessment and witnesses were called upon, the same year the O'Brien king died. And so the O'Brien kingdom was weakened. Now, it wasn't weakened to the state where they could attack yet. So they had to, as I say, wait a little bit longer. Richard was still a very young man. He needed to get a bit older. He needed to build his forces. He needed to plan. And so they engaged in the Bruce Wars in 1318. It was the perfect opportunity for them. And again, they empty the castle, spilling forth their furious armies. And again, they tore through the countryside and wreaked devastation. Stories of dark spirits serving them, all kinds of gruesome tales. Now, the O'Briens called upon their closest allies, Coven of Banshee, and they lent great assistance in the battle. And ultimately, Richard and Thomas, because Thomas was sighted at the Battle of Dysart O'Dea, both of them were sighted, and the day before the final battle, Richard went down to the river and he spotted a woman in white washing bloody armor and the chopped up limbs of a soldier. He asked her, "Who is that?" And she said, "It is you." She warned him that if he did not desist, he would die in the coming battle, and she would be cleaning his armor for the next soldier to wear it. He did not heed her warning, and he and his father returned for the great battle at Dysart O'Dea against the O'Briens, the final conflict. And of course, the two men were slain. And as soon as they were killed, the O'Briens and the Banshee and otherworldly creatures gathered and raced towards Bunratty Castle. They raced there because Lady Declare was still in the castle. And there was, God knows what they had gotten up to in the last 30 years. God knows what secrets they had claimed. And they needed to get this back. They were terrified that would she unleash some ungodly plague upon them as a revenge. And so they tore with all their force. And when they arrived, she was already gone. She left the lands with her family, never to return. What she did leave was absolute carnage. They leveled Bunratty. Everything in the countryside around was ablaze. They burned everything, every piece of evidence of rituals, of any kind of a practice or activity, any spell written down, everything. It was all destroyed, allegedly. Over the centuries, there has been talk that some artifacts survived and that the lady even took some with her. Now, we'll be getting into this story a bit more in the future, Malachy, but there was this is a very heavy part of Irish history, and there's an awful lot of the mystical elements which have been neglected in history books, but you're very fortunate that I'm able to bring them to you.
And I feel that good fortune every minute of every day since I've met you, Balor O'Brien. You have enlightened us all once again in a very important period of Irish history. And I'm reminded of the movie The Never-Ending Story, because literally that's what it felt like. Thank you so much, Balor O'Brien. You have brought us to the depths of despair with the wailing children, and you've brought us to the edge of reason with a story about families battling each other in Limerick at a tourist destination or something. And it really will sink in later on, I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, when you're asleep. Normally 4 a.m, I wake up in a cold sweat, and this man stands at the foot of my bed sometimes, and he looks at me. He says nothing, but his eye opens wide and strikes forth with the fire of wisdom and knowledge, and my face is melted from its bones. Maybe I've been drinking too much, I'm not too sure. Balor, thank you very much indeed once again. We've run out of time, unfortunately. We'll have to come back to Balor's private eye at another time. We'll really appreciate what you do. That's it. I'll switch it off. Will I? Do you have anything more to say? Balor?
Just keep your eye open, Malachy.
Yes. The tapping. Tap, 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 tap.
And I pray for you. I pray that you will wake up.
Oh, I'm awake. I'm awake, sir. Thanks to you and your knowledge. I can't switch this bloody thing off. There we go. So long, everyone.